Ready? Good afternoon, everyone, and I welcome the officials from the Ministry of the Tourism, members of the media, and the public to this meeting of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee. The Committee on Public Administration and Appropriations has a mandate to consider and report to the House on A, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies to ensure that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. B, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies as it occurs and keeps Parliament informed of how the budget allocation is being implemented. And C, the administration of government agencies to determine hindrances to their efficiency and to make recommendations to the government for improvement of public administration. The purpose of this 24th public meeting of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee for the 11th Parliament is to examine the expenditure and internal controls of the Ministry of Tourism as it pertains to the following: accountability and transparency, follow-up to the first report on the expenditure of ministries and departments, follow-up to the third report on inventory control, follow-up to the fourth report on internal audit, subhead 02 goods and services, subhead 03 minor equipment purchases, subhead 04 current transfers and subsidies, subhead 09 development program consolidated fund, and the monthly expenditure report for the period November 2017 to April 2018. The committee is desirous of hearing from the Ministry of Tourism to discover any challenges being faced. The committee hopes that the meeting will be fruitful and shall provide workable solutions to improve the expenditure and internal controls of the ministry. This meeting is being held in public and is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11, Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's inquiry via email parl101@ttparliament.org, facebook.com/ttparliament, Twitter @ttparliament. I now invite the representatives of the Ministry of Tourism to introduce themselves, and thereafter the members of the committee will introduce themselves. Madam Deputy PS.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson, members. I am Sati Jamraj Maramutu, Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Tourism.
Candace Hicks, Senior Legal Officer.
Terence Bagwat-Singh, Senior Business Analyst.
I just remind members, if you can just press the button on the mics. So
Terence Bagwat-Singh, Senior Business Analyst, Acting.
Edward Lee Tang, Tourism Coordinator.
Simone Medina, Acting Director, Research and Planning.
Sandra Kalu, Acting Administrative Officer 4.
Roger Bourne, Project Manager.
Kamal Bal, Accountant 2.
Sita Buntin, Auditor 1.
Elizabeth Dalai, Senior HR Officer.
Very much. And might I ask the committee from my extreme right to introduce themselves.
Brigadier General Ansel Antoine, Member.
Lakram Bodo, Vice Chairman.
Clarence Rambarat, Member.
And I am the Chairman, Bridget Anisette George. We are ably assisted today by our Secretary, Ms. Kiba Jacob, our Assistant Secretary, Ms. Sharan Samuel, and we also have present our Graduate Research Assistants, Ms. Noons and Mr. Lucio. Therefore, can I ask Madam Deputy PS to kick off the conversation by inviting her to make some brief opening remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the esteemed committee. The Ministry of Tourism is in a transitory stage as the Permanent Secretary proceeded on pre-retirement leave, and the newly appointed Permanent Secretary will assume duties on June 18, 2018. I am therefore charged with the responsibility to lead the Ministry's team in the capacity as Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary. The Ministry of Tourism is mandated to position Trinidad and Tobago as a premier tourism destination. The Ministry is also responsible for overseeing and fostering the sustainable development and promotion of the tourism sector through policy direction. The committee would have been apprised in the written responses on the increase in responsibilities by the Ministry following the announcement of the dissolution of the TDC in March 2017. These additional responsibilities would have included operations of the cruise and airport tourism information offices, development and upgrade of tourism sites and attraction, management of various sites vested under the TDC, which are now vested under the Ministry. These would include Maracas, Las Cuevas, Manzanilla, Vassini Beach Facility, and the Labre Pitch Lake Visitor Center. The Ministry would also have taken over responsibilities for promotion and marketing and stakeholder management. Madam Chair, the Permanent Secretary has always stressed the need for accountability and proper procedures and processes, and this would be reflected in there being no adverse reports against the Ministry in the last Auditor General's report. The executive team at the Ministry stands ready to provide the committee with any additional information and is committed to carrying out the mandate of the Ministry for the benefit of the country and the citizenry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy PS. And in light of the fact that you said it's stressing on accountability and the lack of any, or the absence of any adverse report, I really wanted to begin the conversation with, issues of accountability. And we've noted in your submissions that you've referred to the various systems and mechanisms that you have employed in terms of ensuring that there is a proper system of accountability. And you've indicated that your internal audit unit submits quarterly reports to the accounting officers. So do your divisional heads. And I would like to know when last was any internal audit report submitted.
The auditor would answer the question.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the last audit report was on December. We did one for January, for the last quarter. So January 1 was sent in.
Okay. So you did one dated January 2018 for the period ending December?
Yes.
Okay. And might I ask if there were any adverse findings in that report for the quarter ending December 2017? And if there were, what were those?
Okay. She can continue the response, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Okay. The auditor does not have the last report, so can we provide that in response, a written response to you?
All right. I would ask that, and we'd send you a date by which we want additional information. But might I ask then, Deputy PS, and to the auditor, if you could recall any significant recommendation coming out of that last audit report?
As the report would have been sent to the Permanent Secretary, I would not have had sight of the report. So I would be able to look at the report once I get a copy. So once as we get that, I will provide you with the response in writing.
Might I ask then, when is the report for the second quarter fiscal 2018 going to be available?
Well, it would be at the end of June, the quarter, the next quarter.
The next quarter. So what happens between January and June? Would the quarter have gone then?
Yeah. I would find out. I would let her answer for that quarter. Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair, we are in the process of completing that report right now.
So that is with respect to the quarter January.
January to March.
To March.
Yes.
All right. And therefore, it means that the third quarter report is also almost due. All right. So what I would ask the Deputy PS, what therefore accounts for the one, whether you consider the second quarter report late at this time, and what really accounts for that, if it is late, for that delay, having regard to the fact that you've seen this as one of your important tools for ensuring accountability.
Okay, so I will seek to get that information on why it would be late and also provide that for you, that information for you.
All right, but you know, we would have come here and having regard to the submission, while I know you may not, you would have been then acting as?
No, May 13th.
May 13th is when you began?
Yeah, we had a assigned Deputy PS who also proceeded on early retirement.
All right, but so would I be correct to say that between May 13 and now, you would have had an opportunity to see this submission?
Yeah, but I was not privy to the, well, I did not receive a submission.
So you had not seen the submission of your entity
for
before?
The internal audit report to the PS?
Yes.
No, it would have gone to the permanent secretary, so I didn't.
All right, but what I'm asking is, in terms of the submission of the Ministry of Tourism, you would have had sight of this after the May the 13th?
Which submission, Chair?
In fact, in your opening statement, you referred to the submissions that the Ministry of Tourism would have made to this committee.
Yes, I would have been,
So this is the submission I'm speaking of. What date then you would have, this submission made by your ministry would have become available to you?
It would have been about 2 weeks ago,
About
Chair.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
All right. Because you see, the questions that are going to come from the committee are going to be based on the submission and falling out of the submission, so that my concern having regard to the questions and the responses thus far is that if you're not familiar with these submissions, then we may not get very far into this process.
No, we would have gone through the written responses once it will be submitted, but we are familiar with all the other areas. Yes, we are familiar with the written responses. So those information will be provided and can be provided by members.
So it means that your team that you brought here covers the areas which would have been in this submission.
Yes.
Yes. And therefore, I would think, even though you are not familiar, that your internal audit representative here would be familiar with her submission and be in a position to answer questions coming out of that submission.
Yes,
Am I not correct?
Yes, Chair.
And that will speak for every member of the team that you've brought here?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that, you know, again, I underscore my concerns having regard to the questions asked thus far and the answers given. I mean, your team must be in a position to say why the report is late for the second quarter. Even if you don't know or you haven't asked, why is the report late for the second submission? So maybe you could have your internal auditor answer.
So you want to provide the response on why it is late?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the internal auditor would provide the response?
Yes.
The second quarter, the first quarter is January, February, March. As for the first quarter, this second quarter, we haven't finished that one as yet. It'll finish in June.
The fiscal year runs. So we're talking about the second quarter of the fiscal year, not the calendar year.
Okay, true. I apologize. I'm still in the process of coagulating all these things there, so.
All right, so let me ask this. Were there particular challenges with second quarter that makes your report late?
Yes, we have a bit of challenges. And right now.
Excuse me. Yes, Mrs. Bunton. Would there have been special challenges to make this report late?
Well, right now we are in the process of doing the files for pension and leave, and we have quite a lot coming in. So we're more focusing on that because we have a deadline. Is it in June? That the Minister of Finance had put out that we have in June. So we were more focusing on the P&L, pension and leave files.
Chair, can I add? At present, the division only comprises 2 persons, and part of the ministry would be that we are working on restructuring a number of units and actually creating some units, and the audit unit is one where we would need additional staff.
So, one, I'm understanding that is the deadline and the deficiency in staffing that would have accounted for this. So might I ask, is it usual for this report, which you as PS says is an important control for accountability, is it usual for the report to be late?
I would have her answer, but the quarterly reports, from my knowledge, would have been submitted. Most of them would be submitted on time.
And what is on time?
At the end of the quarter. Mm-hmm. At the end of the quarter.
And as I mentioned, we have monthly heads meeting and any evaluation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Chair, just to indicate that in addition to the quarterly reports, the ministry would have monthly meetings. So any issues that would arise would be addressed at those meetings. Mm-hmm. Also, so it's not that the ministry waits for the quarterly reports. If there are any issues, we address it at monthly heads of division meeting.
Okay, so let me ask a number of questions.
Yeah.
Firstly, the quarterly report usually comes how long after the end of the quarter?
I would ask the internal auditor to indicate that response.
Probably about a month after.
It usually comes a month after?
Yes.
Okay, as far as the monthly reports, Madam Deputy Speaker, the monthly meetings, Madam Deputy, PS that you refer to, would you say that the issues that the internal audit treats with are synonymous with the issues that you would see real time in your monthly reports?
Similar issues, Chair?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Because if there are issues, the issues are addressed. Mm-hmm. And one of the issues I know would have been addressed would be inventory control. So the ministry would have put systems in place for inventory control and for some of the other areas that would have been highlighted in the previous reports. Mm-hmm. So all of those would have been addressed by the ministry and in the different areas.
All right. So let me ask you something. If you're saying that your monthly reports mm-hmm. or your monthly meetings yeah. deal with issues as and when they arise, then in terms of your internal audit function, what is its importance then in terms of ensuring accountability?
The internal audit would monitor and make sure that everything is done in line with the financial regulations. So any issue would be highlighted, as I indicated, and those would be addressed as necessary.
Okay, so it means that the issues you are addressing would be after the fact, based on the internal audit.
Yes,
report.
once they are highlighted in the previous reports.
Okay, so that your monthly meetings would really be treating with correcting matters which were highlighted in a previous report, so that your monthly meetings are really, there's really a lag time, okay? And therefore, that's why I'm saying that with all due respect to you, I am not sure that the monthly meetings make up for the omission or the lack of timeliness of the internal audit report, because I get the impression that's what you were telling me.
Okay, Chair. So if we recognize that, and what the ministry would do is that we will seek to ensure that the reports are prepared on time, and if there are any concerns, the concerns will be brought even before the quarterly reports are submitted to the ministry and to the PS.
All right. Now, based on something else you said, I think I need a little clarification in terms of, I got the impression that your internal audit unit, from your perspective, is not adequately staffed. Am I correct?
That issue would have been highlighted in a previous report also.
And in this presentation, you spoke about restructuring and getting more staff.
Yeah.
Am I correct that one of the proposals was for an auditor 2, but it was found that it was not necessary?
The proposal would be for 2 auditors. We have 1 auditor and then the assistant. The proposal would be for an increase in one of the position of assistant.
Is that the proposal, or that's what was approved?
It is before that. The restructuring note is before the PMCD, and we are waiting their feedback on that note.
Okay, and again, I might be mistaken, but was there another note that was before PMCD?
The note that would have been sent, that includes restructuring of the ministry, so all the positions are there for the various units.
Right. Did that include an auditor 2?
Can I defer to HR on if there was any request for an auditor 2?
It's just to ensure that we're speaking about the same thing.
Good day, Chair. I am Elizabeth Dalai, Senior HR Officer. I wish to refer to a memo I wish to refer to a memo dated October 19, 2017. It was addressed to the Clerk of the House, Parliament, from PS, Ministry of Tourism, where the question was asked about an internal auditor 2. An auditor 2 staffing of the internal audit unit of the Ministry of Tourism. In our response to the question asked, in the memo, a recommendation was made. The ministry would liaise with the Personnel Department and the Ministry of Public Administration and Communication to determine if the terms and conditions of the auditing assistant should be amended or whether the services of an auditor 2 should be procured and assigned to the ministry's internal audit. Our response on behalf of the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Tourism, a comparative research was done with other government agencies, ministries, and departments of similar size as the Ministry of Tourism, where our ministry would be classed as a C, in the category C, where it was found that one auditor serviced the respective organizations. Hence, a request for an auditor 2 for the Ministry of Tourism was not proposed in a reorganization review of the internal audit. However, we propose in our restructuring note to add or create an additional position of an auditing assistant. We have currently, right now, 1 temporary auditing assistant and 1 auditor 1. We have asked for an additional auditing assistant and both positions to be placed on the permanent and pensionable staff establishment. Thank you.
This is the restructuring of which we speak.
Yes, Madam Chair.
And what is, Madam Deputy PS, if you could assist me again, what is the status of this?
The restructuring note has been forwarded to the PMCD for their comments, and the ministry has not received the comments as yet. Once the comments are received, the ministry would review the note if required and submit it for the approval of Cabinet.
All right. So let me just ask, the pension and leave exercise which interfered with the normal work of the internal audit unit, is that completed?
That is ongoing, Chair. The pension and leave aspect is ongoing because they are working on if persons are retiring within the next 5 years, they are working on that continuously.
Okay. And is that therefore likely to continue to impact on the internal audit function?
Well, if we get the additional position, there will be the additional resources.
And when last did you follow up on PMCD working on this particular request?
Chair, we are actually in constant contact with the PMCD would have requested a soft copy of the note, and the soft copy would have been forwarded to PMCD.
Okay. So that you still haven't told me when last. You told me constantly.
Friday.
Okay, as recently
Monday, sorry, Chair.
Monday this week.
week.
All right.
Yeah.
And therefore, you would accept, therefore, in the absence of that, your internal audit function will not be as effective or as efficient as you think it should be.
Yes, and if we would address all the concerns and we would take the recommendations on board. We would address the concerns if there are any challenges and seek to get those challenges sorted.
Okay. So what challenges then, therefore,
the timeline.
The
Remember,
timeline.
it was indicated that the timeline for the submission of the quarterly reports.
All right. So you're going to take that into account so that in terms of June, for the quarter ending June, what sort of timeline you're going to insist upon for the submission of the report to you?
For the submission, the latest would be 2 weeks into July.
2 weeks into July?
Yeah.
All right. Now, let me ask again, in terms of your submission, you indicated to us that in terms, again, and I'm talking now for the statutory bodies, state agencies, and other state enterprises under your remit, in terms of accountability and transparency, you've indicated that you hold meetings with heads and implementation agencies. When last have those meetings been held?
Okay, Chair, the TTL, Trinidad Tourism Destination Management Company, it's Tourism Trinidad Limited, that board has only been appointed. The company is not yet operational. So the areas you would note would be what would have existed under the TDC. So the procedures would be similar for the new entity.
So that we no longer have the TDC?
No.
Do you have any meetings with the board, or do you get any reports from the report, from the entity?
The board reports would go to the minister, and the PS would have access to those board reports.
Okay. Now, there is an allocation, I think, of 500,000.
We have allocation under recurrent, marketing, and PSIP for the new entity.
Right.
Do you want the figures? For
Yes,
the, okay.
yes, and I would like to know if there have been any drawdowns on those allocations for the fiscal year.
The opening of the account for the entity would have only taken place this week, and a release would have been submitted to the entity for the I should just go back a little bit, because what is happening is that the company is in the process of being operationalized. So there were interim arrangements set for the entity, and those would be in the position of a CEO, a CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, and a legal manager, corporate secretary.
Okay.
And the bank account would be there, but there's been no drawdown to date.
Okay. And might I ask how much was this release?
2.9 million.
2.9 million was released to the entity. How does that line up with the 500,000, which was the allocation for fiscal 2018?
No, Chair. The allocation under recurrent is 16 million. PSIP would have been 10 million allocated, and marketing, which is 62 is 19 million, and that 19 million is shared by the entity and the ministry. So I'm not sure about the 500,000.
Okay, so the 2.9 million then, thank you for the correction and the clarification. The 2.9 million would have been coming under what? So it's not under recurrent, it's under...
It would be under recurrent.
And it's under what head?
The current transfers and subsidies.
Yes. And so it's not under PSIP?
No.
Okay. All right, so in terms of, also what I wanted to find out is that in your submission again, you spoke about bills must be approved by the permanent secretary. And I wanted to find out, in terms of bills that come to the permanent secretary to be approved, what are the nature of these bills, and if there are ceilings, or if all bills come to you, or if it must be bills above a certain limit, and what that is.
The authority, the administrative officer 4, would have a ceiling. The deputy PS would have a ceiling, and then above that, the PS would have to sign off on all bills.
Right.
But before any project is done, the approval of the PS is sought for projects, and an estimate would be submitted. So it would have to be in line with what would be approved by the PS even before you expend.
Right. So could you just give me an idea of these ceilings that you all operate under?
The PS would be 1 million.
In the absence of, in the absence of the PS, what happens between the ceiling of the deputy PS and the PS?
The administrative officer 4 has authority.
Okay, so the administrative officer 4 has a greater authority than the deputy PS?
No, the administrative officer 4 is 50, and then the deputy, it's 100. And anything above that is PS.
Okay, so I'm asking, in terms of, in the absence of you having a PS now, what happens with respect to bills which are above your limit?
Okay, no, the Office of the Prime Minister would have indicated the ministry cannot be without an accounting officer. So the Office of the Prime Minister would have indicated that I would be appointed as accounting officer for the period that I am acting.
Okay, so that in terms of approving bills over the limit of a deputy PS, you are the person authorized to do that. Okay, thank you very much. Now, you've also placed reliance on your monitor and evaluation unit. Can I ask you about the staffing of that unit?
At present, the unit has two approved positions, one monitor and evaluation coordinator, and there is an assistant coordinator, and I should say an M&E officer in the unit.
Okay.
And those persons are on contract. And those would have been approved by cabinet. In addition, we have 4 short-term officers at present in that unit.
Okay. Now, in terms of your submission, you said that there are templates and mechanisms identified in the framework created by M&E unit, which is used to record activity and financial and output data. And These are a reliable source of feedback on progress, implementation rates, and needs for intervention as required by your ministry. Do you find these templates and mechanisms to be effective?
Yes, yes, Madam Chair. The M&E unit would have developed a number of templates. We also, each head would have to do work plan for their units, and those work plan are monitored, and they have to submit status reports every month. So every month, the heads would send their status, and then it's compiled, and we would discuss with the permanent secretary and with heads on an individual basis or at the heads of meeting if there are any challenges. And of course, the ministry would have its monthly meetings, and in addition, all the templates prepared by the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Planning, those are also updated and monitored.
The monthly status reports in terms of the various units. Could you say when was the last monthly status report you all have obtained by units?
Each unit would have had to submit for May. So May would have been the last one, would have been all heads would have submitted the information to the M&E coordinator.
Okay. And I like the word you said would have had. Has that in fact taken place with respect to each unit?
Yes.
And have any challenges been identified in respect of any of those reports? And if yes, what steps have been taken to deal with those challenges?
The only challenge for number would have been short-term employee and the restructuring, because this would have been the challenge relating to staff in the various units. And M&E is also on a short-term basis at present.
So that the only challenge that you have is staff-related?
Yes.
In terms of terms and conditions and filling of vacancies, would I be correct?
Yeah, and that hopefully will be addressed with the restructuring once that note gets approved.
Okay. Now, in terms of your whole system again of monitoring for accountability, transparency, value for money, you have spoken about all these various meetings adhering to guidelines provided by Central Tenders Board, Ministry of Finance, and so on. In terms of your projects and your evaluation and assessment monthly of projects and so on, what happens if a project doesn't meet the targets that you've identified in these monthly meetings? What action is taken?
Okay. So as what the ministry would do is at the meetings, the status report would be presented. Any challenges would be identified. The ministry would look for if the project is on track, and there would be corrective measures recommended at the meetings. And then officers in charge of the various projects would take those corrective measures.
So could you then give us any example of any particular project that has not recently met targets and how that has been dealt with?
Well, Madam Chair, I'm going to say it because I know everybody would be aware of the Maracas project. But in this case, the project would not have been under the direct control of the ministry at the time. So that would be one of the projects, but we would be in constant contact with the manager, project manager. We also have liaison officers, and we would also be in contact with the ministry and the agency that was executing the project. We would put all the concerns in writing at each stage.
So I'm happy you spoke about the Maracas project. And I've noted you said it was not under the ministry initially, but I expect since TDC no longer exists, it's been under the ministry. Would that be correct?
Oh, the site is vested, but the Maracas restoration project was under the Ministry of Works and NIDCO and Pure. They were project manager for the project.
Right. And what would be your function now that the site is vested under you?
Now that the site is vested, but it would be the completion of the project that has come under the ministry, which would be the car park and the washroom facility and also the vendor's booth. So now that the project is with the ministry, we would now have to seek to allocate vending spaces to the vendors who are in the temporary structures.
The aspects that are under the ministry with Maracas, okay, what sort of targets, based on these monthly meetings and your monitor, what sort of targets have been set, let's say for June 2018, and where are you in terms of fulfilling and meeting those targets?
Okay, the allocation process, we're looking at the next 2 weeks to complete the allocation process for the vendor's booth. And the washroom facilities, we are in a arrangement with NIPDEC, and NIPDEC is managing the car park and will also manage the washroom facilities.
Deputy PS, in terms of Maracas, which is supposed to be this premier location for a fantastic experience for locals and foreigners, when is this facility going to be brought up to mark and all of this restructuring work be completed?
Okay, well, Chair, once the vendor's booth will be allocated, there are a number of structures on the beach that additional works will have to be done on those structures. So I can defer to the project manager to indicate what other works to be done at the sites.
Good day, Madam Chair. To answer your question, we would more or less be guided by Ministry of Works in terms of the timeline in completion of the remedial work to be done to remaining of the vending booths at Maracas. As for package 3 of that project, which contains the sewer treatment plant, they have told us that's supposed to be done by the end of August.
So that has there been any sort of site visits by you all to ensure that these promised deadlines are going to be achieved?
Yes, Madam Chair, and we are also in constant contact with NIDCO asking for updates of the timelines as well.
And you're satisfied that as far as the waste treatment, that the August date is a reliable and achievable date?
Yes, Madam Chair, given what they have told us, yes.
Okay, and as far as the vendors' booths and so on, the timeline, give me an estimated timeline in terms of that being completed.
Well, the remaining vending booths that they have to complete, they have not yet put forward a timeline for the completion of those.
Would the preparation and completion of the facility be hinged upon those booths being completed?
Repeat that question, please.
The facility is being available to the public for the complete customer satisfaction experience.
Oh, okay. Yes, it would be hinged on the completion of those.
It will be hinged on those?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
So that after all this time, we don't actually have a complete timeline for the opening of the facility to the standard that is expected.
The facility has been opening in stages. We have seen the car park open, and that is in full function. Within the next 2 weeks, we would be completing the allocation process for the vendors. So in short time, users of the beach would be able to use the facilities of the vendors there, as well as the washroom facilities. The construction of the remaining booths would be one of the last aspects of the project that, we could then say we have a perfect beach for users to experience.
If I would say by September 2018, we would have a beach facility in the state and condition which you all envisage, would that be reasonable?
Well, I would like to say that, Madam Chair, I would be guided by NIDCO or Ministry of Works as to the timeline. I wouldn't want to set their timeline for them, Madam Speaker. Madam Chair, sorry.
Okay, so that could I then ask Madam Deputy PS that the committee be provided with a response based on your inquiry of NIDCO?
Yes, Chair, we will provide that response.
All right, Dr. Bodo.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Deputy PS, if I can draw your attention to the item of recurrent expenditure and the subhead of official overseas travel, sub-item 27. As part of your submission and as part of the goals identified by the ministry, would be to increase air arrivals by 500,000 to 500,000 by 2020. Increase cruise arrivals by 100,000 by 2020, and increase visitor revenues by 25%. Are you in a position to provide any figures as to what the current numbers might be, perhaps for the last 2 years or so?
Yes, member. I will just pass you on to the Director of Research and Planning, and she'll provide the figures.
Okay, so in calendar year 2016, air arrivals were 408,782, right? Those were the air arrivals. 408,782 persons visited Trinidad and Tobago in 2016, and in 2017, the air arrival figures were 394,650. This would have represented a 3.46% decline.
Sure. And the cruise arrivals?
Cruise in okay, so we normally look at the cruise figures by cruise season, and the cruise season normally runs from November of one year to April of the following year. So in the 2016-2017 season, cruise arrivals to Trinidad and Tobago were 48,878, while in 2017-18, we received 126,392 passengers, which represented an overall increase to the destination of 158%. So cruise is booming in Trinidad currently. Right. This would have been largely due to the fact that there were the hurricanes in the neighboring Caribbean islands, and we received additional cruise calls. So we received 24 additional cruise calls in the last cruise season.
Okay, and with regards to the visitor revenues, there you have those figures.
I think it was, I don't want to say it. Maybe we can provide that in writing.
I think, yeah, that'd be fine.
Remember the period you would want for the 3 years?
I'm sorry?
For the 3 years you would want?
Yeah, so that we can compare. You have something on which you can base your goal.
And just to indicate that we do have arrivals for this fiscal, if you also require that information.
Right. So when you speak about the air arrivals, you're relating that to the tourism industry. How do you go about, what data do you collect specifically to relate that to the tourism industry? Or is this as...
The ministry recently conducted a baseline survey which sought to collect data on visitor expenditure and business data. The Trinidad report is currently complete, and the Tobago report, well, the Tobago it's ongoing in Tobago. They're collecting the business data in Tobago. So we would be able to provide the findings of the baseline survey to you in writing, if you require it.
Sure, that would be fine. Okay. I just want to refer to one trip, and I believe you have it in the appendix, and that's the CTO's State of the Industry Conference. And I note that would have been in October 10 to the 13, 2017.
Yes.
And I see part of the team was a junior tourism minister. Can you shed some light on the role of that junior tourism minister, how the person is appointed, how the person is selected?
Okay, so the Junior Minister Tourism competition was a recent initiative. Well, this initiative was conducted by the ministry over the last 2 years, and it normally takes place during, we have a local leg of the competition where we invite participants from secondary schools throughout Trinidad and Tobago. We have a final, which is held, and we select a Junior Minister of Tourism. The Junior Minister of Tourism is then represented at the SOTEC conference, the State of the Industry Conference. There is a regional Junior Minister of Tourism competition, which takes place, and it's participated by every country sends a representative, a Junior Minister. And we selected one student this year, and she participated in the competition. I believe she came third.
So, Ms. Telesford would have been selected in the early part of the school year. Is that when she would have been selected?
Yeah. Yes, the competition is normally held around April. So,
okay. Yeah. And then she remains in that position for what?
A year.
A year from April.
Yes.
So what would her role be in terms of promoting tourism? I'm just trying to understand how she fits into the picture.
The Junior Tourism Minister, it would be for a year, and the person also represents the ministry at various events and for the engagement of youth in tourism. In addition, the previous Junior Minister of Tourism, they had started the creation of tourism youth clubs in schools.
Right. I'm told that the current person would have developed a project, I believe would have been the Pui Festival. Can you shed some light as to what is the status of that project?
Member, there was a parliamentary question in respect of the Pui Festival, and there was an RFP that would have been developed, and the RFP would have been sent out. But the Pui Festival, as it was initially conceptualized, was changed and would not be implemented by the ministry. The ministry would have had discussion with the school where the junior minister is from, and the school was going to carry out the project in a different form.
So you're saying that the school is taking the responsibility for carrying out this project or a similar project?
Well, it would have been scaled down. No longer the Pui Festival as originally conceptualized.
And it's now going to be the responsibility of the school?
Yes, that would have been indicated.
All right. I just wanted to look at the item with regards to promotions, publicity, and printing with an allocation of $19 million for the financial year. Can you tell us, Deputy PS, how much of this allocation has been spent to date?
I have the accountant with me here, so I will pass you on to the accountant.
Sure.
Promotion, publicity, and printing, that is the vote. I will just indicate that vote is the one that is shared by the ministry and the entity. So once the entity becomes operational, a portion of that money would have to be given to the entity.
I'm sorry, what entity?
Tourism Trinidad, so Tourism Destination Marketing Company. So a portion of that is normally for destination marketing by the Tourism Trinidad Limited.
Sure, but so you can't give us a figure as to how much has been spent to date?
Yes, we do have the figures.
The actual figures spent as of 30th for 2018 is 3,089,049.
That seems to be a small amount of the allocation. Would there have been any particular reasons for that small amount spent in relation to the allocation?
What the ministry has been doing since the closure of TDC, the ministry would have taken over some responsibility for both domestic marketing campaign. So the ministry would have had Stay to Getaway campaign, and when we attend different events, that amount would come out from that vote also. So the small would be because of the operationalization, a lot of that money would go towards the destination marketing.
Yes, as you mentioned, the Stay to Getaway initiative. Can you explain a little bit more about this and how this will benefit the industry? How it's intended to benefit the industry?
Okay, the Stay to Getaway campaign is a local. What we have is that for the vacation period, you want to promote domestic tourism. So the campaign would target persons who want to stay at various hotels and also tours in Trinidad and Tobago. So you encourage them both between Trinidad and Tobago.
Sure, and that has been happening for how long now?
The Stay to Getaway campaign was actually under the TDC, but the ministry would have held it last year.
Do you have any system in place to measure the impact of this campaign?
Yes, the campaign, we have an officer who is at the ministry, so we can provide you with the report from the last Stay to Getaway campaign.
I notice you also have something called the Go Trinbago app. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
The Go Trinidad and Tobago app is utilized when persons come to the destination. It provides information on everything you would actually require while you're in Trinidad and Tobago. We have hotels, you would have the tours, you have transport operator, restaurants, and once you download the app, you actually don't need Wi-Fi once you're in the country, and it will also give you direction to sites and attractions.
So these are for tourists, for visitors to the country?
Tourists and locals also.
How was this information made available to the tourists and the locals?
It's on the App Store and your Google Play Store. So persons were encouraged, and when the ministry participates in any event, the app, you would normally promote the app to persons both abroad and locally, and it's also utilized during the cruise season.
Is there something when you arrive in the airport or the cruise terminal that gives you a big hint? Or
yes, the intention was that when you arrive, you would get like a notice on your phone. So that was the intention.
So, and that happens as you enter the airport?
I can confirm that for you. Yeah, but it should, yeah. And the airport would have, to download the app. So at the airport. Yeah.
Pierce, just let me ask one question based on a response given to Dr. Bodo. We were given for the promotions, publicity, and printing vote, the figures up to the 30th of April 2018. Would we have figures for May 2018 because we're midway in June?
Yes, we would have for May.
And could we be provided with that figure?
Yes, those figures will be provided to you, Madam Chair.
We have figures now?
No.
Yes, Chair.
No.
You have it, yes.
So the figures up to May, the end of May, 3,688,46.
That's 3 million?
3,368,846.
So, can I see that this is really a shared vote with the entity? Is the entity likely to become operationalized before the end of this fiscal?
Yes, Chair, that is the intention.
That is the intention.
Yes.
So that in terms of, say, projections for this vote, because as Member Bodo pointed out, the drawdowns seem to be small.
Yes, Chair, but there are a number of initiatives that once the entity is operationalized, they would need to do. One would be the destination website. So the destination website, and there would be a number of initiatives, marketing initiatives that would be undertaken by Tourism Trinidad Limited.
Do you have any idea of the costing of these various initiatives?
We have estimates.
Yes.
But I wouldn't want to, because we would have to go out, the entity, of course, will have to go out to tender.
All right.
But we would have similar estimates.
And all right, let me ask, do you have any idea of time frame with respect to when the company would be going out to tender with any of these initiatives?
I would not be able to answer that, but we can seek to speak to the chairman of the board and provide responses to you.
All right. Now, that is the entity that has only since hired two employees.
Interim arrangements have been made for the 3 persons, and then the board would have to conduct the recruitment process.
All right. So that these going out to tender for these various initiatives, would that precede the employment of people with the interim arrangements, or it's after the board has recruited staff?
I can speak, and then I can speak to the relevant person and then provide that response, because they would have to give us that response.
All right.
The board.
But in the absence of a full structure, what is the relationship between this entity and the ministry?
The ministry has oversight, would have oversight for the entity. And as we indicated earlier, where we had the systems in place for monitoring the entity and the meetings also, all those procedures would be what we would utilize for the new entity. And the entity would have to submit estimates to the ministry to say what activities they will be conducting, and the ministry will then use that to request releases for the entity.
And that's the reason why I asked about the relationship, because I understood that you had oversight. Yeah. But when it came to, drilling down into questions with respect to operationalizing I didn't get the impression that the ministry was yet in a position to give us any sort of specifics, yet one says before the end of this fiscal year.
No. And then the entity has to submit to the ministry, and the ministry goes to the Ministry of Finance for the requests for releases. So
and that's in terms of releases, but even in terms of operationalizing its business, I don't get an impression that the ministry can really give us any responses with respect to time frame, save and except the general response, which I think I've heard before.
That would be correct.
That'll be correct. Yeah. So that, again, I wonder how close is the monitoring, the oversight function being done by the ministry?
No, but the board actually meets at the ministry's offices at present. So the ministry is aware of what is happening, and all the approvals will have to come from the cabinet.
Let me ask, with the interim measures, is there any representative of the ministry on the board?
No.
Okay, thank you. Member Rambarat.
Thank you very much. How are you avoiding duplication between the ministry and the new company?
The ministry and the ministry and the company would have different responsibilities.
So, when I saw something on travel, report on overseas travel, where, take for example the CTO meeting the Cruise Association conference and so on, right? Or in 2015 to 2018, ministry people attended those events. What happens now that you have this company? Because 2015 you had TDC. Is it that TDC sends representatives and the ministry sends representatives, or how are you going to streamline things?
At those events, you have different activities. So just to give an example, so if you have Caribbean Week, you would have a ministerial meeting, and then you would have a trade aspect. So with respect to participation, you would have the meetings, and then you would have the trade aspect. So the entity would normally set up the booth and man the booth at these events. In respect of cruise, because it would be promotion and destination branding. At the event, you would have if you have joint meetings, cruise has always, and air would always be a joint with ministry and the TDC and any other body to attend these events. So if you go in airlift, you would have airport, and if you go into a cruise event, you would have the port.
I'm just trying to be very clear. So I think the chairman asked the question before. Exactly what is the role of the ministry and what is the role of the company?
Mandated to promote the destination, product development. The ministry sets the policy direction. The ministry would set the policy direction, and the ministry would also have a role in seeking investment in the destination. And the company, of course, would do the international marketing and branding and destination promotion.
And I think the chairman asked this question, but just to be sure, how are you monitoring this company in terms of the role of the ministry and the role of the company and what the company is supposed to be doing?
Okay, similar to what would have existed under the TDC, the entity would be required to submit monthly reports to the ministry for all expenditure, recurrent, PSIP, and marketing. Those reports, when they come, they are reviewed by the ministry. And of course, the submission by the company, we would know what activities they're doing. So you would have the monthly meetings with the entity and with the all the management. We had joint meetings with the ministry, and so everybody shared what they were doing, and also to ensure that there are no duplication with what the ministry was doing and the entity.
Member Antwi?
They said a board of directors were appointed in August 2017 for the Trinidad Destination Management Company. Was that interim management company board appointed?
Interim board? So the board is the board of directors for Tourism Trinidad.
So it's not interim?
No.
Okay. It says that no money was expended in fiscal 2018 to date.
This would have been sent up to April, so the information that we were presented with the opening of the bank account, that would be the only release to date, which would have come after the response was sent.
So how much money has been expended to date?
Not expended, but released.
Released.
2.9.
$2.9 million.
Yes.
Released to date.
Are you okay? You have
No,
anything else?
not as it.
All right. Madam Deputy PS, you finished?
No, not as
Okay, all right, sir.
Under minor equipment purchases, we have two different items: 4, other minor equipment, and item 5, telephones. But cell phones are being bought under both areas. Could you explain? So the cost of cell phones have been accounted under both other minor equipment, item 4, and other telephones, item 5.
Okay, I'll just have the AO4 clarify.
Telephones are purchased, cellular telephones are purchased under other minor equipment. If it was placed under telephones, it was an error. We do apologize.
Okay, so that will be corrected then.
It will be.
Do you have a policy for the return of cell phones when a user contract is ended?
We have a user policy in the ministry for the phone to be returned.
So the phone is returned?
Or purchased.
So the person can have
The option is available to purchase or return.
And what measures do you have in place for loss, damage of cell phones? Cell phones is a thing. Right now, my cell phone damage quite fell. What policy you have in place in terms of that?
Unfortunately, right now, the ministry has so little money under phones. So if you lose your phone, you will not be able to have a phone replaced. It will have to be at the owner's expense.
And if it's damaged?
Similarly.
Yeah.
Dr. Bodo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Deputy PS, if I can just take you to the Development Program Consolidated Fund, and there are a couple of projects there. And the one I'm interested in is the consultancy for the development of a strategic tourism incentive plan, which would be very appropriate in the light of wanting to use tourism as a diversification measure for the economy. But yet I see that, that the project start date is the first quarter of fiscal 2019, and the project has not commenced to date. Can you shed some light on that, and whether any effort is being made to bring this project forward as opposed to?
Okay, remember what would have happened is that the ministry would have gone out for RFPs for the project, and the bids that came in would have been over the PS's limit for consultancy. So the ministry now has to approach the CTB, so that is why the timeline would have been revised.
So do you have any ideas to when where we are in the process?
We're in the process of approaching the CTB, and we're mindful of the deadline dates for submission of requests to the CTB.
Yeah. Just one other question. Now, in terms of the other projects, in terms of development, now, in the public domain, there's been quite a bit said about this Sandals project in Tobago and its contribution to tourism. Has there been any allocation at all with regards to the Ministry of Tourism for this project?
No, none.
And can you indicate as to why that may not be?
I wouldn't be able to say, member.
All right. Can you, Deputy PS, tell us whether the Ministry of Tourism has any involvement at all in this project going forward?
No. Not at this time.
All right. Member Rambarat. Okay. All right. Well, I'll go ahead. Let me ask this, Madam Pierce. In terms of, I'm looking on the rent and lease of office accommodation and storage. And the impression I got is that these facilities that have been rented is only because of the role you all have had to assume since the TDC has ceased to exist.
Yeah, but the ministry did have one warehouse at Trade Zone.
Yes.
So we did have that, and the others would have been because
those are new.
Yeah.
So did the TDC operate offices and storage space at Piaco and cruise ship before?
Yes, Chair, they did.
All right, so that these always existed. It's just that this has become a line item under your vote.
Yes, we have to now cover the costs for the continued operations of the two office spaces.
Okay, so that I'd be correct in saying that once the new entity begins to function, this becomes a line item under them?
Yes, that would be the intention.
Okay, thank you. Now, I want to talk a bit about the regulation and the licensing of the various stakeholders, the tour guides, the hotels, guest houses, etc., and the role of the Trinidad and Tobago regulatory authority. Okay. If you could start off by telling us, where has this reached, this project of creating this authority, where has it reached to date?
Okay, Chair, I will pass you on to the legal officer, and she will provide you with some background and the status.
The status currently, it's that legislative diagnostic report would have been completed, a bill would have been completed, and right now we're in the process of considering, there were several stakeholder consultations, and we've also sent out the requisite documents to the various ministries and agencies, and we're in the process right now of receiving, considering, and consolidating those recommendations.
Let me ask then, in terms of the current status in terms of enforcing standards, say for tour guides, am I correct in saying all of this is really voluntary?
In terms of, you want to relegate it to tour guides? You wanted that specific example?
Ask it for each. I was going to ask it for tour guides. I was going to ask it for guest houses, hotels.
Okay, there are mechanisms currently. So there's not tourism-specific regulation. There's an umbrella. There's a plethora of legislation that governs the requisite subdivisions of the tourism operators. That would be accommodation. They have to apply for their fire clearance, town and country, and so forth. So those things are already legislative and in place. Tour guides, for example, have to go for their magistrate's license to operate. So there is a degree of regulation already, health and safety, and so forth.
But, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Those regulations are not
tourism specific
to the experience that,
right.
All right, so that there's fire safety even if you had a clubhouse, right. All right? So that in terms of bringing it to a standard for the tourism product, how is that achieved in the absence of this regulatory authority?
Well, just to clarify, Madam Chair, the focus of the project is to establish the authority. The intent is that those nuances. In other words, elevating the tourism sector would more than likely be a regulatory process of the Tourism Authority when they come on board, because it's not a simple process. They will have to scan the sector. It's a lot of work that will have to go into regulations, and we will focus on establishing the authority to do so.
So, in terms now on the absence of having the regulatory authority, because this is something that's a discussion for some time, how does one ensure a certain standardization of the various products, sites, accommodation, tours, and so that you are offering Destination Trinidad to whether it's a local or foreign consumer?
Okay, I may have to solicit the assistance of the team in that regard, but what I can give is that we do, on a continuous basis, engage the tour operators in training. There are several programs, STAR, STEP. So maybe I could pass you on to the tourism advisor to give a little more clarification. There's a wide range of training mechanisms that and there are also site visits that take place that in sum total bring some measure of elevated standard. So
it is really, therefore, voluntary.
And
I don't have to.
Yeah, through suasion and showing the business efficacy of elevating your standards.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So in terms of what you're asking, we're looking at a standard and the adherence to standards. Now, we rely on the Bureau of Standards to set tourism standards. We work with them in conjunction and in collaboration with the stakeholders. So if you're looking at the tour guides, there is a standard for tour guides, and the tour guides were part of the development of that standard. There was a program called the TTIC program that was implemented by the Tourism Development Company, and it was voluntary, as you rightly said. What it did, the operators they had to go to an audit with the TTBS. And once you look at the standards and you were able to meet the minimum requirements of that standard, you were certified. There were regular monitoring of these tour guides. So there were spot checks and ad hoc meetings with them. So if you were a tour guide and you were certified, in order to ensure that you keep that certification, they would accompany the tour group and see and listen to what they are saying, because there are certain things that are in place there in that standard that they must meet. Once you've achieved that, you would have gotten a certification, and it was renewable every year.
So this audit that the Trinidad and Tobago Standards, Bureau of Standards conduct, you would have said that the last audit was done in 2017, am I correct?
That's what is recorded.
That was the audit?
Yes.
Yes. Now, in terms of the findings of the audit and where, say, tour operators were found deficient and recommendations were made, is there any follow-up by the Ministry of Tourism to ensure that the various operators have come up to the level of compliance in areas where they were found deficient?
That was part of the system. So if you were deficient in any particular area, so that non-compliance had to be treated, you would have to write to the Bureau and advise how you're going to deal with that non-compliance. Right. If you're unable to do so, they used to work with them to see how best they can achieve it. It is voluntary, and we understand that sometimes the tour operators, the tour guides, and the operators in the industry themselves, they're hard-pressed to conduct certain things. So they work with them to ensure that they can comply with the requirements of the standard.
All right. So this is really being done and driven by the Bureau of Standards and not by the Ministry of Tourism.
They have the technical expertise, and they are able to ensure that if they have, the person is audited, because that's where the expertise lies with the Bureau. So they can tell you whether they have met the standard and the requirement, and at what level they have met that. And then they can also provide you with any of the issues and how to treat with it. So yes.
And therefore, what is the role of the Ministry of Tourism in that?
With respect, so the TDC would have been involved with that aspect of the project. The ministry would be, we would receive the reports from the TDC indicating how many persons were certified and what were some of the challenges, and then we'll work with the TDC to ensure that the operators actually were able to meet or treat with the non-compliance.
So I understood you to say, Mr. Litang, the TDC. So in the absence of the TDC, because you're saying the ministry worked with the TDC, in the absence, what is the role of the ministry?
The role at this present time would be in terms of treating with deficiencies in capacity. So whether if it pops up that this person did not have the adequate training, did not have the specific codes of conduct and so forth, we will have to assist in that regard.
I ask how many entities that you all are assisting in such a way currently?
I don't have that at present. I'm going to defer it to our legal person.
Madam Chair, I'm advised that that is under the purview of our stakeholders unit. They actually serve as the direct conduit with all of the stakeholders. They actually, on a daily basis, take the concerns, be it what level of training they require, what they need to elevate their game, and their assistance in business planning and so forth. So our stakeholders unit, probably we will have to revert in writing, ask the indulgence to revert in writing to you on that. I'll pass you on to the research officer.
Add some.
Our stakeholder unit is also responsible for a project called the Caribbean Small Tourism Enterprises Project, or STEP, which seeks to assist small tourism operators to enhance their competitiveness, profitability, and sustainability. Under this project, in this fiscal year, they have conducted a one-day symposium entitled Digital Transformation Within the Tourism Sector. They have also conducted training for tourism entrepreneurs in terms of association management, getting non-traditional tourism stakeholders belonging under an association, capacity building sessions for customs and immigration officers, as well as training for the St. Christopher's Taxicab Cooperative Society Limited. So the ministry continues to train our stakeholders and address any concerns.
And therefore, what mechanisms do you use to assess the level or the efficacy of your training? How do you assess whether your programs have the reach and result in the sort of standards that you wish to be evident in the industry?
So one area might be where we have, where we get feedback from tourists or visitors, and they would let us know, because they would, an exit surveys, because the visitors would have face-to-face contact with the tourism operators in terms, be it taxi, accommodation. So we would get areas such as, I guess, customer service, and their ability to meet the needs of the visitor.
Might I ask, because that's interesting, how often do you all do these exit surveys? Is it an ongoing thing that happens at every port, every day?
The CSO conducts a survey of departing visitors, and the ministry has recently been meeting with the CSO, and we are supposed to be obtaining some of this data so that we can address some of these concerns, and we can also seek to improve our tourism products and our tourism offerings.
But this...
And build them into our programs.
Yeah, but you don't have any role in designing the exit survey?
Yes, the ministry and the TDC were involved in developing the questionnaire. For
CSO?
Yes,
okay,
with
thank
CSO.
You. Thank you. Minister Ambarat.
Yes, I was just, how do you, under which sub-item do you capture sponsorships?
Promotions, it would be marketing support, so 62.
Okay. I have a question on the sub-item 62. What, as far as you know, what is the latest with the Trevlon Hall matter? Are you familiar with the Trevlon Hall matter?
Legal could respond to that.
It is under the charge of the Ministry of the Attorney General, and we have other matters, and as with all other ministries, really is on a current basis. I could perhaps provide that in writing, but all requested information has been provided to the AG's office in relation to all our matters. So there's nothing outstanding, but I can provide an update in writing to you.
So you're not aware that the court delivered a decision in April 2018?
No, that was not. We requested an update in writing from the ministry, but we did not receive a response on the status of the matters.
Well, I wanted to ask you, in light of Justice Rahim's 25-page judgment in the Trevlon Hall matter, what changes have the ministry or the new entity made in relation to sponsorship and promotions or expenditure under sub-item 62? Because at paragraph 87 and 88 of that judgment, Justice Rahim makes some serious statements in relation to the TDC. And I felt that maybe the ministry would have been aware of it by now.
No.
I would recommend that you get hold of that decision and read it in relation to the oversight of sub-item 62 and the oversight of the new state entity, which is why I asked the question early on about the relationship and how the oversight takes place.
Noted, ma'am.
Member Antoine?
Yes, I want to return to current transfers and subsidies. You have a new sub-item 04. Again, Trinidad Destination Management Company, 16 million. And as recurrent, you have a development program, 10 million, and promotions, publicity, printing, 19 million. And you state in your response to the question about the agency, Tourism Trinidad Destination Management Company was established in recognition of the fact that the THA has responsibility for tourism in Tobago. The two destinations are selling different visitor experiences, which requires different product offerings coupled with different marketing approaches. But we have Go Trinbago Destination app. Who owns it? THA or the
Go Trinidad and Tobago, it's destination. Go Trinidad and Tobago, there are actually two areas on the app. You would have Trinidad and then you would have Tobago. So all the attractions, all the hotels, so it's both Trinidad and Tobago on the app.
So it's joint?
Yes.
Any cost, how is it, or any cost reference is shared?
No, the app would have been developed under the TDC at the time, so the TDC would have covered that cost.
Okay, and the way forward, obviously we'll be attending quite a number of activities that requires overseas travel. How do we intend to approach it? Would we be sending two separate teams for THA and for Trinidad Tourism Ministry?
In some cases, yes. The THA would send a representative also, the Division of Tourism and Transportation. So in some cases, yes.
And again, how would we market it? We market it as a joint destination or separate destinations?
According to the cabinet decision, it is two separate companies and it is different products. So you would have the Trinidad product, you would have the Tobago product, and you would have the Trinidad and Tobago product. So there was a task force appointed, and the task force was working out the arrangements for joint events when both Trinidad and Tobago are participating.
But we have not finalized that as yet.
I cannot say, member.
All right. Looking forward again, we now have, for instance, a Tobago Jazz Festival, but we also have Blanchisseur's Jazz Festival. Would we now see the promotion of, say, Blanchisseur's as the Trinidad Jazz Festival, or how do we plan to go forward?
Okay, well, if some of the festivals would be privately run, so the festivals are run by Trinidad, and then Tobago would have theirs also. And in a lot of the cases, different communities would be promoting community events, and the ministry would try and support in marketing these events.
And does the tourism ministry plan to market Trinidad and Trinidad in Tobago as a destination for Tobagonians and vice versa?
Yes, member, because we do have domestic tourism and the domestic promotion, similar to what we would have mentioned earlier, the State to Getaway campaign, and then Tobago actually has a roadshow in Trinidad where they promote Tobago to Trinidadians.
Okay.
Madam Deputy PS, earlier you all spoke about the app that you have, that once somebody hits PRCO, they can download this app for free. Do you have any figures to show the usage of this app?
I don't have it, but we do have the hits, what we will call the hits, so we do have that information which we can provide to you. Right now we have the countries, but I will have to indicate the number of downloads for you.
The number of countries,
yes,
in terms of?
It's 125 countries. It's been downloaded by approximately 125 countries. But the number, I would have to give you the figures itself, with how much persons actually use the app.
Yeah, but something in terms of what I understood it is that you would have, of course, used that to sort of guide visitors who are here. Would you have any data to show the download usage in terms of people arrivals to see how effective the reach of the app?
Yes, but we may have to provide that in writing because we can't locate it at this present time, but we will be able to provide you with that.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of gathering figures with respect to visitors, do you all segregate your figures in terms of international, local and regional visitors, and also in terms of new visitors and returning visitors?
Okay, the arrival figures are received from immigration, so we would have all countries. So you would have your source markets, and every destination that someone come from, we would have that information. We would not have, if it's a new visitor, we would not have that. That would have to be captured in a survey, if that's the case. So the exit survey, you could always include that as an exit survey question if this is your first visit to the destination.
Let me ask that. In terms of your participation in, say, the conferences like, I think, Sea Trade and Roots of America, Caribbean Travel Market, and so on, how do you relate your attendance to those various conferences? I think it's 11 you all selected this year. How do you relate that or convert that into, one, whether you're on track with your product, and two, generating tourist flows?
Okay, some of the meetings, of course, would be required because Trinidad and Tobago are members of a number of the international organizations. Just to give an example, Roots Americas In respect of Routes Americas, there was approval for us to bid for the hosting of Routes Americas in 2020. So that would translate into over 700 visitors to Trinidad and Tobago if we win the bid. And that would be all airlines representatives and destinations would be coming to Trinidad to do business relating to airlines and all agreements relating to airlines. And in similar cases, you are promoting the destination at each event to encourage visitors to visit the country. So the same aspect with the trade show aspect, FCCA and all of those, you would be promoting the destination to persons at all events.
The promotion, let's say sea trade, what format does that promotion take?
I will pass you on to the Director, Research and Planning, who would normally attend that one because we have different persons responsible for cruise and air, so she can indicate that to you.
Okay, so the question was, can you repeat the question, please?
In terms of, I was asking, based on what the Deputy PS says, she says attendance of the ministry to these various conferences promotes the destination. In terms of Route Americas, I understood her to say that if you want to bid 770 people, and I take these now to be business people, this is a business meeting. In terms of sea trade, for example, what format would promotion of Trinidad and Tobago take?
So at the cruise meetings, normally we have, it would take several formats. So we have the cruise conference, where you learn about best practice. There are areas such as how to improve your product, tours, port facilities. There would also be a trade show where the public or buyers, where buyers and suppliers interact for tourism services or cruise tourism services. There is also another aspect is where we would have meetings, one-on-one meetings with the cruise line executives. And at these meetings are really critical because these are the people who plan the itineraries. These are the people who choose the destinations, basically. And once we develop relationships with these persons, we are able then to, our country becomes part of the itinerary, and the cruise line visits our destination. Sometimes truly, as the former TDC, they would have had marketing incentives with the cruise lines. So they would, on board, there would be promotion, marketing and promotion of the destination, so through videos and that kind of thing. As we have seen, cruise has been increasing over the years. And, well, I mean, we hope that it will continue, and it is part of the critical need to go to some of these meetings.
So that I would expect that, let's say the example you've given with, say, attracting cruise lines, this is not an initiative on alone by the ministry?
No. In the past, we would have, as mentioned previously by our DPS, we would have had participation, the former TDC as the marketing agency, so we would have had a booth, and they would be responsible for any collateral material, interaction with the public, because the booths would have been part of the trade show as well. So destinations have booths as well as suppliers of tourism services. We would also, right, so yes. That's the question.
Okay, so let me ask something. Could you tie to show us any recent line that has come here to a visit, say, a promotion at a trade show? Or?
So, I think for the last, let's just say maybe max 5 years, we have had increased calls from the MSC line. The MSC line is a European line, and they have sent various flagship cruise ships to Trinidad and Tobago. So the last one that came would have been the MSC Fantasia, and that cruise ship, I think it holds about 4,000 passengers plus crew, and that line actually, the line, I think they board in Martinique, and the persons who come to Trinidad, they actually come to shop. So you would see them going downtown. They say they go to Francis Fashions, they go to all the downtown stores, and so that would increase our visitor spend there. We create employment, because on a cruise ship day we have the tour operators, because they are the pre-booked tours which happen. We have the transport, we have, so it's like the multiplier effect, where you have it trickles down to the man on the street.
Yeah, but no, what I was really asking is whether you can tie any line now coming here to say your attendance to any particular...
Because as I said, this line would have started about 5 years ago, I believe, and itineraries are planned 2 years in advance. So we would have gone then, and we would be reaping the benefits now, because they are planned 2 years in advance. So if we went 5 years ago, from the third year, we would start seeing.
So that they started 5 years ago, and you are tying that to your attendance to a particular sea trade or cruise-a-thon or something
FCCA,
like that.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right, Member Bodo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to take us back to the audit of the TTBS, and perhaps Mr. Litang and Ms. Hicks could come in here. One of the issues in terms of a tourist experience is, of course, the hotel. And in my own experience, if I travel and I go to a bad hotel, I just decide not to go back to that hotel. But if I engage in an activity, for example, parasailing or jet skiing or ziplining, I may not have another chance if it goes wrong. So I'm a little bit concerned that we still are not at the stage where we've gone from voluntary to mandatory. Can you tell us what is the international best practice in terms of how we protect tourism when they embark on these activities? Because that would be something very important. A tourist would want to have the assurance in terms of safety in terms of these activities.
Specifically jet skiing, for example?
Well, I'm just using that as an example, but I mean, we have ziplining, for example, in Trinidad.
And there was the incident in Tobago.
Yeah.
Yes, so what I am aware of is that the Tobago has implemented a policy. We have that in our possession. I'm not sure whether they've implemented, there's a draft jet ski usage policy and a draft, the name escapes me right now. There's a draft policy that also gives a more holistic look at beach safety in terms of us and jet skis. I can't say specifically. From the report, that would have been tabbed as one of the areas, the legislative report, that would have been tabbed as one of the areas that is unregulated as per the sector, that pose a potential danger for tourists. So in the absence of, I would have to say what measures are in place. There is the Maritime Services Division has charge of certain matters, and in tandem with the Coast Guard. I may be misquoting certain things, but the Maritime Services Division has some responsibilities in that regard. But as I remember, the report would have spoken to that being an unregulated, for the most part, an unregulated area.
Yeah,
segment.
Sure, I understand. But what I'm saying is that
what measures are in place?
But is the ministry, or has the ministry been trying to develop a holistic approach to this thing and perhaps take it to the Attorney General?
Yes, as a result of the consultations that was brought to the fore. So that is a part, that element does form a part of the report as currently, that is an area of concern, and what you're asking, an immediate measure, interim measure.
Yeah.
I guess what we were looking at was the rollout of the TTRLA to implement those things going forward.
But you understand my point? It's
yes,
going to impact in the short term even.
Yes, it presents an immediate risk.
Yeah. The other question I have is, do you envisage Airbnb, for example, and entities like Uber having a role in tourism, and perhaps Deputy PS, you may want to answer this, having a role in tourism in Trinidad and Tobago? And if so, how do you plan to engage these entities going forward?
Uber, of course, would have pulled out from Trinidad and Tobago. And also with Airbnb, the ministry, the standards we would have would be for what would have been under TTIC and TTBS. Persons would the unregulated, the ministry has no control over those persons who are booking with these entities.
But as part of the tourism trust, do you feel that the ministry has a role to try to engage with these providers, these operators?
For example, with regard to the fact that we're taking over full responsibility for the Maracas site, we're currently in process of drafting codes of conduct that would speak to matters such as safety, vending on the beach, and so forth. So all those matters are currently stuff that we're considering. They're in the nascent stages, I would say. But especially given the handover of the Maracas beach, we're contemplating all those health and safety issues on that scale.
I hear you. One more question. I just want to go back to this Go Trinbago app. You know, sometimes you travel to a foreign place, and you may miss a billboard or you might miss a sign in the airport, but what you don't miss is a message coming to your phone that inviting you to download a free app. Is that how it operates when you enter Trinidad? Do we have an arrangement, for example, with the mobile or the local provider to immediately give you an alert that this app is available and you should download it? Okay. In other words, does the app just hit you when you arrive?
Okay, well, the app, when as I indicated earlier, it would have been promoting at each event, but that was the intention, that when persons enter the country, that they would get an alert to download the app. And just to indicate that we did receive the figures with respect to the number of users, and it is 10,833 persons.
Thank you. But are you saying that you received the alert, or you said it was the intention?
So
what actually happens now when somebody arriving this evening? What happens?
I can find out from the relevant person who manages the app and provide that information if the alert is received at this present time. But that was the intention.
I'll be grateful. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, again, I just really wanted to look at the official overseas travel, sub-item 27. And with respect to the question when we asked, are there policies regarding this sub-item? And the response really focused on the role of destination marketing. And in terms of the Ministry of Tourism, had identified key goals towards its strategic goal of achieving socio-economic transformation. And a number of goals have been identified. Increase air arrivals to 500,000 by 2020. Increase cruise arrivals by 100,000 by 2020. Increase visitor revenues by 25%. I guess, I don't know if that's annually or by 2020. Expansion of niche-based tourism, including meetings, incentives, conferences, etc. Okay? Clearly, that can't be achieved by the just pure destination marketing. So could you, therefore, shed some light with respect to, one, what are the factors that you all intend to employ and within your control to ensure these targets are met, whether these targets are intended to be met incrementally per annum? And therefore, if yes, what you would have expected to be your target by, say, end of calendar 2017, and whether your measurement of where you are shows that you are on line to achieve your ultimate goal by 2020.
So all these goals would be included in the Ministry of Tourism strategic plan. So the goals would have been developed as a sector in some cases, because the ministry knows that it would not be able to do this on its own. So at the time when we developed, it would have been with the TDC also. So the ministry would have had its targets to meet, and the entity would have had their target to meet. And then we would have created the linkages with all the other sectors. For example, the regional corporation and any of the entity that would be required to actually achieve the goals. The intention would be for all policy and the plan where we would have targets for each particular year. And if the targets, we would be reviewing the targets at the particular time and making sure that we revise if necessary.
So where are we at?
The ministry continues to do the work. The strategic plan, has not been approved as yet. The strat plan would have been sent to the cabinet. Cabinet did ask us to include the linkages, more linkages to the other sectors, and we are to resubmit that to cabinet.
Okay, and when is it likely you're going to submit the strat plan?
By next week, within 2 weeks.
Within 2 weeks?
Yes, the revised strat plan.
Okay. Is that related to the strat plan for the Tourism Trinidad Destination Management Company Limited?
No, the entity will have to develop their own strategic plan.
Okay. So the strategic plan you're referring to would be the ministry strategic plan?
Yes, Chair.
My understanding was that that was done in collaboration with TDC.
At the time, but it was revised since then.
Okay. So that is revised only with a responsibility for the Ministry of Tourism?
With the necessary linkages to the other ministries.
All right. So you say that you anticipate that by next week, next 2 weeks?
Within 2 weeks, yeah.
Okay, and therefore I would ask you to give us a status at the end of next 2 weeks with respect to that strat plan in terms of if you have resubmitted it.
We will, Chair.
To Cabinet. Now, as far as the Tourism Trinidad Destination Management Company Limited, what is happening with that strategic plan?
The company will have to develop the strat plan, so we can seek to get that information and provide to you if they have a timeline.
You have oversight over this entity too? Yes? Currently you have oversight over this, and you have no ideas yet where they've reached with the strat plan time frame for its completion?
Once it's operationalized and they get the CEO on board, we can get that information and provide, once the company is operationalized with the interim management.
Okay. So could you get back to us to find out where they have reached in terms of operationalizing in their company and in terms of beginning to work on these?
We can.
All right. So I just want to ask you in terms of some matters that we would have seen in the press. One has to do with the Trinidad and Tobago Hospitality and Tourism Institute, and with respect to an article in last year newspaper concerning GATE students and non-payment for GATE students. This is an article, August 29, 2017, Camille Hunt article.
Well, GATE does not fall, the TTHTI does not fall under the Ministry of Tourism.
It falls under whom?
Education.
Under education. So this does not relate to you?
No.
Okay. And then might I ask also, with respect to this search for a new tourism plan, this master plan and the national tourism policy, which is supposed to be revised in an effort to give global competitiveness of Trinidad and Tobago. What is the status with respect to that?
Chair, I will pass you on just for you to get some background information from the tourism coordinator.
Okay, sure.
Chair, you asked for the status on it, or I just wanted to get clear your question.
Well, it really, one is to find out what is the status of it, if the revision has been completed, okay, sure, and if not, why and when.
Good. In terms of that, we did an RFP. It was disseminated. We got persons bidding. We got about 10 proposals coming in. So that part, the RFP, was done. We had reached a stage where we were able to have qualified bidders. So that is at the point we are right now. When we looked at what was submitted in terms of price, we realized it was way past the PS limit. So we are, at this point in time, reviewing that RFP and seeing how we can move it, advance it forward. More than likely, we'll have to go through the CTB.
Okay. And you have any idea of time frame with respect to reviewing the RFP?
It's currently being reviewed right now.
Yeah, but time frame for completion of your exercise?
That would take place before the end of the next quarter, before the end of the fiscal.
Before the end of this
yes,
fiscal?
Yes.
And therefore, we'd ask if you could report to us
sure,
by end of fiscal, say, October 1st, what is the status of your review exercise with respect to this? Member Amarat? No, okay.
On the projects, I don't think, I'm not sure if we got an update on the other facilities, Las Cuevas, Labre, Manzanilla, and Vesigny. I saw that there were some dates. Yes, could we get an update on Las Cuevas, Labre, Manzanilla, and Vesigny, those projects?
Member, on the works that's been done?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I'll pass you on to the project manager.
Currently, for this ending last fiscal, we identified some enhancements and beautification works at each of the sites, and we have a plan going forward to continuously upgrade these sites to more of an international standard. Right now at Vesigny, we have completed the concessionaire building, the rehabilitation of the concessionaire building, and in short order, you would see RFPs going out to house a concessionaire to come in there and start operating in that facility. Likewise, at the Manzanilla Beach facility, as well as the Labre Pitch Lake Center. And that's how we continue to upgrade those sites.
All right, so
going forward.
Just to be clear, the note we have for Manzanilla is that refurbishment works commenced on April 19, 2018. So that is completed?
Sorry, say that again, sir.
We have a note before us that for Manzanilla, the refurbishment works commenced on April 19, 2018. Mm-hmm. So is that work completed?
Yes, that work, I believe, was referenced to the concessionaire building at the Manzanilla Beach facility. We also have some further works at Manzanilla. We have drainage issues to deal with, and plus some other aesthetics, landscaping, and so forth.
So when would the further works begin?
Those will begin shortly. We intend to try and get those works completed before the end of the fiscal.
Right, and on the Labre Pitch Lake facility, we have refurbishment works on the concessionaire began April 24, 2018. Where are we with that now?
That has also been completed, remember.
Right, and then there is another note on Labre that discussions would be held with the CEO of Lake Asphalt regarding the expansion of the car park at the Pitch Lake facility.
Yeah, that conversation we are still to have with the CEO in terms of expanding the car park, given the visitorship we have at that facility.
Right. And on Las Cuevas, we have in March 2018, the existing concessionaire was given notice to vacate. A draft RFP for construction of a pedestrian walkway, installation of surveillance cameras and solar-powered lights will be completed by May 2018. That is the RFP. So what's the status of that?
The RFP has been completed. We are doing the last touch-ups on the estimates for those works, and maybe within the next 2 weeks, those RFPs would go out for the tendering process to begin.
And I just want to ask the PS, and this is coming now from the Auditor General's report of 2017, referring to IT and ICT, and particularly with respect to the expenditure figures for the Ministry of Tourism over the 5-year period. And it comes in a comment that the ministry was using different applications to perform similar functions for accounting, library, and inventory. And the implications with that expenditure not being separately classified may result in the lack of readily available, accurate information in appropriate planning, budgeting, and resource allocation decisions. IT expenditures such as consultancy and training costs being excluded from total IT costs, and inefficient use of limited financial resources. And therefore, I wanted to ask if it is that you were using a different application for accounting, what is that application, whether your decision to use a different system was based maybe on cost savings or something peculiar to your ministry.
Chair, I will have to seek to get the information from IT with respect to the software and the systems used, and we can provide some clarification on that.
In writing?
In writing.
Thank you very much.
Chair, and through you, just to respond to Member Bodo, with respect to the alerts, the Senior Promotions Officer has indicated that at particular times, alerts were sent, especially at Carnival, and then they are encouraging and sending SMS messages to persons to download the app. So alerts are received.
Thank you. All right, now I was just wondering, when you arrive at the airport, is a visitor?
Yes.
That's what you're saying?
Yes. Okay. The Senior Promotion Officer has confirmed that persons were receiving alerts, and also they were encouraging and sending out SMS messages to download the app.
Thank you.
And as by way of follow-up, Madam Deputy PS, I just wanted to find out in terms of your inventory control mechanisms. In our earlier inquiry, we had realized that you all didn't have a stores clerk or inventory clerk, and I think the submission was that that was part of your restructuring. And I am to inquire, where has that reached in terms of employing an inventory clerk or stores clerk? And if there's none up to date, in the absence of that, what measures have been put in place to safeguard your assets?
Okay, I will defer to the HR manager so she can give you an update.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, the inventory stores, on the note to Cabinet for the restructuring of the Ministry of Tourism, there is a proposal for a stores clerk too, and we chose to ensure that it is an established position, not a contract position, because we are taking costing into consideration of salaries under contract. And okay, in terms of the tagging or inventory control of equipment and stuff like that at the ministry. The AO4 is responsible for inventory control, and should you need further information, through the chair, I would have to ask the AO4 to explain the system in place, respectfully, for the inventory control.
Mrs. Kalu?
Hi.
Thank you.
Yes, it is me. Inventory, we have invested into asset management software. Using that software, we are able to label and scan items into a database. Now, the asset management software is user-friendly, and the clerk, too, who is on the schedule, is able to conduct this. So we have our inventory. Our inventory is updated. We have audit checks on our inventory, and everything is there.
So your labeling, is it, are they removable labels? Are there electronic labels? How is the labeling done?
The label is done manually.
Yes.
It's a manual labels that we purchase. We stick it onto and we scan it into the database.
Right.
Now, with this software, we can also take pictures. So we have like pictures of the items. So all that is there onto the inventory system.
And can I ask, internal audit, do you do in your audit, does it also do audits of the inventory?
Yes, we do.
And when last have you done that?
We did one last month.
Last month?
Yes.
And are there any issues?
No, things are on stream. We visited a couple sites and they're on stream.
You visited sites?
Yes.
And you've also checked the database. Have you checked it against actual items?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
And there are no issues?
No.
All right, and the last question I want to ask the Deputy PS. In an earlier inquiry, we had heard about this roadmap for the tourism sector, which was before Cabinet. What is the status of that?
Chair, I will have to pass you on to the tourism advisor. The roadmap would have been developed by the Standing Committee for the Sustainable Development for Trinidad. So the committee would have developed the roadmap, and it would have been submitted. A presentation was supposed to have been made by the chairman to Cabinet. The chairman has subsequently resigned.
So today there has been no approval of it or not?
No approval, because that presentation was to be made.
Okay.
Yes, just going back to that question I'd asked about that court matter. Do you think that, do you have a sponsorship policy for the ministry?
Yeah, there was a sponsorship policy under the TDC, and the ministry would have adopted a similar policy in the ministry.
And have you had any discussions with the new entity about having a sponsorship policy?
The entity will have to develop its own sponsorship policy now.
So would you?
We can have that discussion.
Would you, as Deputy PS, direct that they have a sponsorship policy?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, members? Okay, so that I would like at this stage to bring the inquiry to a close. There are a number of questions that we'd sent to you, Madam PS, Deputy PS, in writing, and also some of the undertakings. The Secretariat would liaise with you as a reminder of what they are and in terms of the deadlines for the submission. I want to, on behalf of the committee, thank you and your team for coming and participating in this discussion. I want to thank the members of the media who have remained here with us and also the members of the listening public. I wish you all a safe journey home, and I now suspend this part of the meeting. Pleasant evening.
Thanks, Chair. Chair,